Hello, everyone. I hope everyone can hear me fine. My name is Matthew Miner, and I am the Director of International Programs from MIT Solve, which is an initiative of the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. I very much appreciate everyone for joining this discussion on the Mission Billion Challenge. We hope that you find it very helpful as you consider submitting your solution to this challenge. I'm joined here by my colleague Noya Levy, and we are also joined by our colleagues and partners from the World Bank Group, Vajanti Desai, Manager of the Identification for Development Initiative at the World Bank, as well as Seth Ayres, Senior Program Officer for Identification for Development from the World Bank as well, and Adam Cooper, who is an Identification for Development technical expert, will also be joining this call. At the end of the call, you will have the opportunity to ask questions via the chat function on the webinar. If you do not have access to this function, please email us your question at missionbillionhelp@solve.mit.edu. Again, that's missionbillionhelp@solve.mit.edu. I ask that during this call, you keep yourself on mute just to make sure that we don't hear any background noise or feedback. And if you have a question, please use the chat function. So with that, I would like to ask Seth Ayres from the Identification for Development Group at the World Bank to talk more about ID4D and their work. Go ahead, Seth.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Matthew. I hope that everybody can hear me okay. If not, as Matthew mentioned, just please send a chat if you're having any difficulty. Thanks to everybody for joining us and taking the time out to learn more about the Identification for Development program as well as the Mission Billion Challenge. So we just have a couple of slides to give you a bit of context about Identification for Development and why identification is a critical priority for development. And so if we could go to the first slide, please. Great. So to give a little bit of overall context, we estimate that globally there's about 1 billion people who cannot uniquely identify themselves. The vast majority of these people live in low-income countries, and particularly within those countries tend to be the poorest segment of society. So for folks that are already struggling to meet day-to-day issues, they're also having to face life without being able to uniquely identify themselves. And as we know, if you cannot uniquely identify yourself, you have a real difficult time being able to do some basic services, particularly some of the core services that we know that can take people out of and lift them out of poverty. Primarily, these services tend to be around financial services, because in order to be able to do what's called Know Your Customer, the background check required to open a bank account or to register a SIM card to be able to get a mobile phone, you need to be able to uniquely identify yourself with some sort of legal form of identification. So these are critical issues that are made difficult for people who do not have an ID. Other basic services like health services, education, the ability to cross borders to do trade or any other types of economic activity are also significantly hindered. Next slide, please. Okay, and also what we have seen is that the digital identification, once that it's in place, can be a very powerful enabler for many of these services and improvements in people's lives. So in the context here, you can see the various ways in which a digital identification system can have a positive impact, with several examples at the country level, from the case in Peru around access to health services, to what we've seen in India with a substantial uptick in banking accounts, both for men and for women. So a range of different services that can have a huge benefit on the poorest segment in the societies that we're looking to improve their quality of lives. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is just to give a little bit of background about the Identification for Development program here in the World Bank Group. So our focus within ID4D is to bring global knowledge and expertise across a range of global practices here in the World Bank that cut across issues related to digital development, to social protection, to health, financial inclusion, governance, gender, legal issues. So a whole range of issues across the World Bank Group that overlap with identification. And what ID4D does is works around three pillars. The first is around analytics and thought leadership. So a lot of analytical work, which I'm going to touch upon, that links to the Mission Billion Challenge, work that we also do around global convening, whether that's work around technical standards, the principles around identification, which we'll touch upon as well, and then also the Mission Billion Challenge fits within this pillar. And then the third pillar and our sort of core focus is around our country and regional engagements and working directly with countries on looking to either build out their digital identification systems or improve existing systems that are in place. So next slide. Okay. About over a year ago, ID4D, along with 24 organizations globally, put together the principles on identification for development. These 10 principles outline some of the core thinking around approaches to identification. These principles have been approved by all of the multilateral development banks, as well as the UN agencies that are working on identification issues. And what you see on the screen is that number 6, protecting user privacy and control through system design, is the principle that we want to focus in on specifically for the Mission Billion Challenge, and which I'll touch upon in a bit more detail over the next couple of slides. Next slide, please. Okay, so the way that we think about improving privacy and data protection within digital identification systems, which we know is a fundamental issue that needs to be tackled as we expand and address the issue of the 1 billion people who lack any form of official identification. So from ID4D's perspective, we look at it in two primary ways. One is around the legal and regulatory framework that are required. So what sort of data protection laws do you need to have in place, not just for digital identification systems, but also for other purposes. And then the second is to actually look at specific technological approaches, either within the system itself or at the end user, the individual who's accessing his or her data related to their ID, being able to enhance their ability to access information about how their data is being used, or to be able to use the data themselves. So combining both the legal and regulatory plus what we call the privacy by design techniques, then we see that linking to creating a robust digital identification system overall. And so on the bottom, you can see the different pieces coming together, and where we see this Mission Billion Challenge is very much looking at some of the technological solutions or policy approaches that could enhance data privacy and protection. Next slide. Okay, just to give you a little bit of a sense of on the legal and regulatory side of our work. So we have been developing what we call the ID Enabling Environment Assessment, and it looks at key issues around enablers, what's driving the digital identification systems, as well as civil registry and vital statistics, We're looking at data protection, security-related issues. This tool, this assessment tool, enables us to look across the economy as a whole and then be able to determine how the existing laws, the robustness of the existing laws that are in place, how those can be improved and enhanced going forward. And so that's a key component of how we are approaching strengthening data privacy protection within digital identification systems within the countries in which we work. Next slide, please. Okay, and another area, so on the second component related to privacy by design, we've done work to look across a number of countries and the various approaches that are currently being taken in these countries to enhance data privacy and protection. So this slide gives you a sense, looked at essentially 4 countries, India, Estonia, Belgium, and also Peru, and you get a sense of these different types of approaches, including minimal data collection, ability to do encryption and security, anonymization. So I'm going to touch upon this. We have a report online that goes into much greater detail, but critical for those who are interested in putting a solution forward, please take a look at these examples of what currently exists in the marketplace in order to assess how these could be enhanced further, as well as new ideas that could be added to these mix of existing solutions. Next slide, please. Okay, so on our website, so we've touched upon a number of things. All of these documents you can find on the ID4D website through the link there. The 4 documents that I've highlighted here is the work that we've done on the privacy by design, including the case studies. So those examples that we just covered on the last slide can be found in that document. The legal and regulatory assessment tool is the next image there. We also have a catalog of relevant technical standards for digital identification systems, and then the principles, which I touched upon earlier. You can find out more detail about those as well through our website. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so now transitioning specifically into the Mission Billion Challenge. And as you can see on the slide below is the problem statement, the key issue that we're looking to tackle with this particular challenge. So one thing before jumping right into this particular challenge is to mention that for ID4D, this is the first challenge, but we are planning to do this on an annual basis as a way to tackle some of the most pressing issues within digital identification. So for this year, we're focusing on data privacy and protection. And so the key issue that we're putting forward and hoping that all of you will consider providing solutions for is how can digital identification systems in developing countries be designed to protect people's privacy and provide them with greater control over their personal data. Next slide. All right. So the challenge is seeking practical and cost-effective privacy by design solutions that can be embedded into digital identification systems. A key issue, because our focus is on developing countries, is that the solutions should not only enhance the users, provide greater control over the user's personal data, but also be able to be used easily by those with low literacy and numeracy levels, so that we can maximize the impact of the solutions. And the third point is also, in order to be able to scale this globally and quickly, we are requesting that the solutions be made open on public licenses so that they can be shared without any restrictions and to be incorporated quickly into identification systems that are currently in place or those that are in the process of being built out. So those are some of the key aspects for us as part of the design of the Mission Billion Challenge. Next slide. All right, so the challenge, we are going to consider solutions across the whole spectrum of the innovation stages. So we are open to seeking solutions that are at the idea stage, at the prototype stage, pilot, growth, as well as scale. So we are open to any solution across the spectrum of the innovation phases. Next slide. All right, and then on the judging criteria, we have 5 areas that we are focusing on. These include alignment, so ensuring that the solution put forward directly addresses the challenge, the problem statement that I just mentioned before. The context appropriateness, which is key around being appropriate for the types of countries in which we are working. So these issues of low literacy and numeracy that I touched upon before are critical for us. Scalability and ease. So if we're going to be able to provide this solution globally, that's a critical factor for us, is to both be able to scale it and have ease of use. The feasibility is a 4th consideration for us. Part of that is being able to, the feasibility both on the implementation, but also the sustainability of the solution. And then the final judging criteria is related to the how innovative the idea or the solution being put forward is. So these are the 5 judging criteria. And now I'll turn it over to Matthew at MIT Solve to go through the application process.
Thank you very much, Seth. Quickly, we just want to walk you through the application process via the ID4D World Bank website and chat with you a little bit about what you can expect as you prepare to submit your application. For the Mission Billion Challenge, you will navigate to the challenge landing page, which you can see at the top of your screen now, id4d.worldbank.org/missionbillion. You can also just go to the ID4D website and click on the Mission Billion image, which is the first thing that you will see. This page will provide you with an overview of the Mission Billion Challenge, and there are a few tabs that you can click through in yellow that will give you more information, including a more in-depth description of the challenge and problem statement, as well as additional resources that you can access on identification for development. You will see a Submit Application button in red. When you are ready to submit, you will click that button. This will bring you to the solve.mit.edu Open Innovation Platform, where the challenge is being hosted. Specifically, on the Solutions tab, you can see other solutions that have already been hosted if you're interested in seeing the types of solutions that have already come in. And then when you are ready to submit a solution, you click the yellow button on the right-hand side. Well, it's black in this picture, but it's yellow on the page that says Submit a Solution. The next page once you hit Submit a Solution, will give you more information on the application process, as well as additional helpful information and official rules of the Mission Billion Challenge. Please be sure to read through those rules before you submit. Okay, so once you click Get Started, you will be asked to set up a user account. This takes just a minute, and you will be able to connect using your pre-existing Facebook, Google, or LinkedIn accounts. Or you can simply sign up by inputting basic information about yourself. If you already have a user ID for the Solve Open Innovation Platform, you can log in here as well. Once you are logged in, you will have the option to select a challenge. Since you came through the Mission Billion Challenge page, This challenge will be the only option that you are able to select. Once this challenge is selected and you click the blue Continue box on the right side, you will be brought to the first page of the challenge application. This is the first page of the challenge application, which gives you basic information on the challenge. And then as you scroll down, you will see that the questions start. It will ask you a series of questions about your solution, which components of the challenge your solution addresses, and how your solution works in general. Please note that the deadline to apply to the challenge is February 24th, 2019 at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time. Again, that's February 24th, 2019, 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time. Unfortunately, we are unable to accept any late applications. The platform will automatically close at that time, and we cannot accept your applications beyond that time. As Seth mentioned, judging will take place using a set of criteria over the following weeks after February 24th, and finalists will be announced mid-March and will be contacted via email. Now, I would like to open the webinar up to any questions that you may have on identification for development, the Mission Billion Challenge, or the application process. Please use the chat function of the webinar to ask your questions rather than unmuting yourself. This will just allow for a more orderly question and answer portion of the webinar. I will read each question aloud and pass them on to the appropriate person to answer. Okay, so one of the questions that I'm seeing now is if we have a French version of the application, and unfortunately we do not have a French version. The only versions that we have are in English, and the applications are expected to be in English as well. Another question is if we can further explain what we mean by public licenses. Seth, I don't know if that's something that you want to discuss from the World Bank's perspective.
Yes. Matthew, can you hear me? Am
Yes.
I unmuted? Yes. Okay, great. Yes, so for the public licenses perspective, and so also I think, Matthew, you noted when you went through how to submit your application, you will see that there are the rules related to the Mission Billion Challenge. Please make a point of reviewing those because it goes into a bit more detail in regards to the public licenses. But the main point here is that we want the solutions, as noted, to be scaled as quickly and as widely as possible, and therefore we do want the solutions to be under a public license in which the individual or the organization submitting the solution still receives attribution for the solution, but the solution itself can be used by anyone without restrictions. So that's the primary sort of approach with the public licenses. There's a bit more detail if it's a software solution on using the Mozilla license approach. Those details, as I mentioned, are in the overview or the rules of the Mission Billion Challenge. So also please check those out for a bit more detail on the description of the public licenses.
Thanks, Seth. And again, those rules can be found as you navigate through the signing up to submit a solution. At the bottom of one of those pages, you will see the official rules of the Mission Billion Challenge that you can read through. It's very important to look at those. Next question is it possible to design a solution to be used in one specific field of public service, such as health, for example? Seth, do you want to take that as well?
Hi, this is Vajanti Desai. So I do believe that we're not going to limit the types of applications, so please do submit what you think makes most sense. The relevance to this could be wider than that one sector, and I think that's part of the reason why when we want to have more of this open innovation challenge, it's ideas that might even be currently deployed in, let's say, financial sector use cases right now, but that can be deployed in more of a country's broader foundational ID system. But we're not going to be limiting the purpose or the use of the application. And I think one other thing also on the previous question, if there's anything that isn't clear when reading the definition of public license, please do send an email to the email, and we'll come to the teams that are here so that we can note if it's still unclear after further review.
Great, thank you. Okay, so the next question is, does the solution have to be a prototype, or can it be just an idea for a start? I'll just quickly take that. It can be an idea. As Seth mentioned in the presentation, it is open to solutions at all stages of development, so that includes prototype and idea, as well as if there's already a project underway that's beyond prototype. The next question says, when you say you are looking for solutions, are you specifically looking for software and or hardware systems? Basically, this person is asking because they represent a core technology standard that could be a component of a solution, but would not be looking to submit a operating system necessarily. I believe the answer is that it can be a component of an entire system in general, but we'll also open this up to the team at the World Bank for their input.
Yes, it can be a component, it could be a module, it can be a process change, it could be, so it doesn't also have to be a software or hardware, it could even be ideas for process change as well. Okay,
the next question, it relates to licenses again. It says, does it mean that for-profit companies are excluding from presenting their solutions? Again, I would take a look at the language that we put out on the official rules. It does not exclude for-profit companies by any means for submitting their solutions, but what's being sort of submitted as a solution would need to be sort of open source in order then to be utilized. Feel free to send us an email if you'd like, if there's more questions on the idea of open licenses, and we can provide a little bit more detail as well if there are additional questions there.
I think just to clarify a bit of where we're coming from, because this was discussed quite a bit amongst a number of people before we put that through. As you may note from the Principles of Identification for Development, which should be available also on the website, one of the attributes that we're really striving to achieve in this agenda is avoiding proprietary vendor lock-in solutions. And so what we felt is that if for this challenge, if one of the goals is scalability and adoption more widely, and that there's a dearth of ideas on privacy by design, that the best way to have the greatest impact, so we're really looking for people who are really motivated by having significant impact by scalable adoption, is that the last thing we want to do is say these are wonderful ideas, but that only one company is able to deploy them globally. So it really should be motivating individuals who want to see this fully adopted at a broad scale through the various country engagements that we have on the ground. This is not per se a typical business plan competition.
So Vajanti, this next question will be interesting for you to answer as well, and it's regarding MOSIP. Brett is asking if MOSIP is already an identified and accepted solution by ID4D, or would MOSIP need to be submitted through this process in order to be considered an accepted solution?
So MOSIP is actually a potential use case, so it's not a solution for this. It could be, for example, a platform. Let's say there's 3 amazing ideas of privacy by design features. MOSIP could be one potential platform that would adopt some of these ideas. Similarly, it could be a country or any other ID system in which there is engagement, or whether it's through bank engagement or non-World Bank engagement, that really likes the idea and wants to adopt and feature it in. So I'm not sure, Brett, maybe we can have a discussion offline, but MOSIP is already planning to be an open source platform, but these are more features or modules of privacy by design that can be incorporated as part of MOSIP or any other ID system. And for those who are unfamiliar with MOSIP, it's a modular open source ID platform that's being developed, again, to avoid some of the challenges that we have seen in terms of countries reinventing the wheel, but also avoiding some of the issues of vendor lock-in.
Thank you. Okay, that was the final question that I've seen come through. So if no other, oh, one more just came through. So the question here is if we can elaborate on the idea of solutions that can be embedded into digital identification systems. It's being asked that, so I gather that a submission could be as complex as a new software application or as simple as 2 to 3 steps in any of the ID lifecycle stages, or even a piece of technology or hardware. So are we able to elaborate on solutions that can be embedded into digital identification systems?
Yes, Matthew, that's correct. And I do think if people have a chance to look at the privacy by design note that's also on the website, it gives some features that have been adopted in a few ID systems, but it was really a way to do a bit of homework of various approaches that have been used in the past, but it's not at all comprehensive. And so the idea is that we know there are some of these features that are already incorporated into some digital ID systems, but we really are looking for many more innovative and practical ideas. So, this is a fairly new field in a way, and there could be a number of new ideas that surface that haven't been considered in the past. So that note does provide some broader context of a few different country examples that are already in place. But in no way is that comprehensive.
So Brian is asking, given the fact that proposals can be very diverse, how will we evaluate one solution against another when they are, so to speak, apples and oranges? Can a very good idea on a napkin beat a full stack solution is the question. I'll turn this over to the World Bank as well, but this is something certainly that we've discussed quite a bit, and don't want to limit the field to just already developed kind of full stack solutions. The idea is that it's an open innovation challenge, so we want ideas as well. We have set out a specific set of criteria that we believe judges that are mentioned in this presentation, but then also in the resources that are on the website. That I think it's 5 different judging criteria that will hopefully help us account for the idea that we have. We'll definitely have solutions at different stages, and then we'll also be briefing the judges on this, basically on this concept as well, that we are definitely open to new ideas as long as the judges, many of whom will be technical experts, believe that they are indeed feasible. I don't know if the team at the World Bank has anything to add with that.
Yes, Matthew, actually, we'd like to have our colleague Adam Cooper jump in here.
Okay, we will unmute Adam now.
Thank
Go ahead, Adam.
Hi, everyone. Hope you can hear me.
Can, yes.
Yeah, really good questions about, let's go back one question actually to whether or not a submission can be a full solution or whether just part of a solution. I think the important point for me there is that innovation within a component of a solution is just as important as innovation for a whole implemented solution, end-to-end solution. And if we can identify innovation in one small part that has a huge impact, so then that's a big win for everyone. So I think that's very important. On the idea question, I think was the last one. I think that's also very interesting as well, because there's no restriction. It's certainly in my mind, and correct me if I'm wrong, Seth, and others, that it doesn't have to be something that exists or is going into production or has already been written as code necessarily as part of this submission. It's incredibly interesting to hear about ideas that might actually create those things in the future and just need to be put into action. So absolutely, yes, the incredibly good idea submitted is probably just as important as the finished product.
That's very good. Thank you, Adam. Just next question quickly is if a pre-existing, basically if the solution can have a pre-existing ID platform as one of its components. The example given is obviously India's Aadhaar ID system. It's being asked whether this can be a component of a new solution, and I would probably argue that a new solution would likely possibly be a component of Aadhaar rather than the other way around. But World Bank team, you can sort of answer that as well.
Maybe whoever asked that question could clarify. I'm not quite sure I understood.
I think what's being asked is if essentially a solution could use Aadhaar as a component to their solution. So if their solution was something, I guess, larger than Aadhaar, but used Aadhaar as a component to what they're suggesting. But they're welcome to clarify via the chat as well.
Yeah, no, I think it's more that, not Aadhaar itself, but let's say a system like Aadhaar. This could be a component or an approach, a process difference that for a system like that, but obviously not Aadhaar itself. We have engagements in over 30 some different countries where obviously it would be the people in charge of the implementation of these systems who would be making final decisions, but this is exactly what we mean by scalability. If there's ideas and solutions that are immediately practical, feasible, and adoptable, you could see your ideas essentially being embedded and infused through a number of different systems globally. So I wouldn't pinpoint one country over the other. What we are also working towards is getting some countries who are able to sort of raise their hands now and say, we really want to be part of this process, and there's a few that have already said that. So it's not to say that they would immediately adopt it, but that there would be already the demand side part of embedded into this overall process, and even have some of the judges as people who are end users and adopters. So I don't know if I answered that question, but happy to clarify with whoever asked.
Great. And then this last question here asks about specifically MIT Solve and our role. The question is, since MIT Solve seems to be oriented towards entrepreneurs, are there examples of how Solve was used as a process or program to enable a social change initiative like ID4D? It might be helpful to give a little bit more context to those who are not as familiar with Solve. I'll quickly answer that. So I represent MIT Solve on the call. Although MIT Solve certainly engages entrepreneurs in our process of open innovation, we do accept solutions from anyone, not just entrepreneurs. They could be researchers and academics that are working on solutions to challenges in the world. But really, what this partnership between the World Bank and Solve is an opportunity for the World Bank to utilize the open innovation platform that MIT Solve has developed, which is what we went through in terms of the application process that you can see, and some of Solve's methodology around developing challenges and sort of running innovation workshops as well, specific to challenges. So certainly Solve is not only geared towards entrepreneurs. There is sort of anyone that's working on a solution to one of the challenges that we run on our platform are welcome to apply and be part of the Solve community in general. The next question is on if there are any implications for ideas or solutions that are patented. We did talk a little bit about this already, and the request here is that all solutions that are submitted are made as open source solutions, and I would refer to the rules, the official rules of the Mission Billion Challenge for more information here as well. That is the final question. What we will do is we will be posting this webinar online on the ID4D Mission Billion Challenge page at some point today. So you can certainly access this and send it to anyone that would be interested in the challenge. If you have any additional questions, please feel free to email missionbillionhelp@solve.mit.edu. You can also find this email address on the Mission Billion website, but again, it's missionbillionhelp@solve.mit.edu, and we are happy to answer your questions or point you in the right direction if there are resources online that can also help you. Once again, the deadline to apply for this is February 24th, 2019 at 11:59 p.m. So I want to thank everyone for their time and just quickly pass it on to the World Bank team should they have anything to close with.
Yeah, I'm going to say something and then Seth also pass it on to you. But, you know, I just want to say one sort of motivating pitch. You know, this is a massive development challenge. We're estimating, as you know, about 1 billion people who are unable to prove who they are. The reason why the World Bank has been part of this agenda is because of the significant opportunities that this provides in providing greater access to a range of services, whether it's financial inclusion, health, social safety nets, a range of development needs. But we're also very aware of some of the risks associated with providing critical, robust, sustainable digital identification. And while we're working on the important foundations of laws and regulations of data protection and privacy, we do feel that there are so many new opportunities for privacy by design, so technical features, process features, other ways of embedding privacy-enhancing elements into identification systems. And so we really want to use this platform to surface some ideas that may be already deployed in one sector, but that can be reused in this broader agenda, or something that is brand new. You know, we know that particularly with the public license that this isn't going to be something that is going to be a moneymaker for an individual, but we really want to motivate the people who are keen on seeing massive adoption scale and great impact. Obviously, we do hope that the cash prizes provide some incentive in the platform for being recognized globally when the final pitch events and the final submissions are selected. But really, this is a wonderful opportunity for whether you're an individual, an organization, a researcher, a company, to really have significant impact. So we do hope that this is something that you're very interested in engaging.
Great. And this is Seth, just to thank everybody again for taking the time to join us for the webinar today, and then also to just reiterate Matthew's point that please do engage with us if you have any questions about the challenge, any specific issues that you would like to have further clarified. And we very much look forward to having your engagement and to receiving a number of exciting solutions through this process. So thanks to everybody for joining us.